love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running.
Welcome back to another edition of Coach's Corner. My name is Walter Beede, affectionately known as Baseball Lifer here on YouTube and on Twitter, Baseball Lifer 11. And what we try to do is answer questions from parents, student athletes, and we talk with coaches about all things pertaining to youth baseball, travel baseball, high school and college baseball, and on occasion, college recruiting. So we're joined today by Matt. Matt, welcome aboard. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Walter.
You're very, very welcome. Matt, what kind of questions do you have? I know you have a few sons there, so fire away.
Sure. I've got 12U and 10U. I'm the head coach of both their travel teams. And recently it's come up, we have junior high tryouts coming up, and a lot of the parents are asking me, should they try out? Does it make sense? We live in the Nashville area, which is a big area. Kids these days are not as enamored as they used to be about flying their high school or their middle school flag. And especially coming off 12U, the small field to the big field, that's a whole nother different discussion on what could be in between there. But the consensus has been with a lot of the travel teams around here is that these sixth graders and even seventh graders are just not even going to bother to try out, because even if they do make the team, they feel like they're going to get a lot of non-competitive game reps, whereas they're going to get more competitive game reps on the travel circuit. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts. Do you see that as being a trend that's going to continue to move forward and into the high schools and get bigger, as far as kids just saying, I'm just not even going to play for my high school or middle school?
Well, I know it was a trend that started probably 5 or 6 years ago. And fortunately, I can almost definitively tell you that trend is going to turn around drastically over the next year or two. First of all, it is a false narrative that is generally spread by the business model of travel baseball. So it doesn't behoove a travel organization to lose pitching to junior high or high school games if they're freshmen. And so what was happening was you saw a retreat. The families were kind of backing away. And what happened is you get a lot of college coaches push back and say, look, we want to know what it's like to be part of a team, part of a community. We want to know that you understand what roles that you have to take in order to be a part of a team and to help within the concept of a team. You listen to college coaches all throughout the country, not just there in Nashville. You listen to these coaches and they'll say, man to man, we are teaching our kids more about being a teammate than we are about how to be better baseball players. So from a skill set perspective, yeah, they might have some advanced skills, but they're not easily assimilating into our program and recognizing what it takes to be a part of a team. It tends to be more of a me culture than a we culture. So you're going to start to see college coaches really push that back. And let me tell you what the lead sled dog will be in that driving force. Now more than ever, people don't realize when I talk about a tsunami, I don't mean the literal sense of the word. What I say to parents is a tsunami is coming. And when the beginning of a tsunami, the tide goes way out and you don't see anything and there's really no concern. But all of a sudden you see that big wave coming forward and you know what's inevitably going to happen. And that's what's happening within travel baseball. And here's how. Major League Baseball reduced the number of minor league teams as well as the number of student athletes drafted every year during the major league draft. And what ensued was we have now fewer slots available for more student athletes that are going to college. This allows college coaches to be pickier, more selective, more patient, and they're not recruiting the high school student athlete in the numbers that they have been previously. And so let's say a typical recruiting class is 15 players for a college, regardless of the level. What ends up happening is that used to be filled with 12 high school student athletes and 3 JUCO transfers. Now might be 5 or 7 high school student athletes. The rest are going to come transfer portal, JUCO, postgraduate schools, which a lot of parents aren't familiar with down there. and then the high school student athlete. So as soon as these travel organizations begin to sound off on the current narrative that's actually happening and occurring, it's not to their advantage, by the way, which is why they're slow to kind of speak on this topic. But I think you're going to see a more concerted effort with regard to the junior high and high school teams. One, you get controllable reps there. Parents always talk about competitive reps. You can't control competitive reps, meaning if I'm a shortstop, I can't control how many ground balls I'm going to get, how competitive those ground balls are going to be. You can't control the competition. What you can control is your individual skill set and team development mindset. So I really believe that those parents that are kind of running away from the high school and junior high, they're going to be running back faster once they learn what the real world looks like.
It's great feedback. Great feedback. And this is not something I'm advocating,
right,
one way or the other. This is just one of those trends and some of these topics. And a lot of them are new parents. I mean, this is my oldest I'm talking about. He's 12. This is kind of my first time through it. When I grew up, things were very, very different. So jumping back into this and trying to feel through this world and really just always trying to do right by these kids is the ultimate goal. So really appreciate that feedback. So question number 2 I had for you, amongst us coaches and travel ball, enthusiasts, I guess, where I'm always wondering, you play for a championship every weekend, which doesn't necessarily sit well with me. But it is what it is. What do you believe for the spring, from March 1st to July 31st? What do you think is an appropriate amount of total games that you would play versus the number of practices that you could get in during the week? Because I've seen it already. Burnout is real, even at 10, 11, and 12. And in my head, I think this past cycle, we did about 35 to 40 games and we practiced twice a week. And most kids and parents that, we accomplished 2 goals. Did their kid have fun? Did their kid get better? And we checked both those boxes with that amount of volume. But I would just like to hear your feedback on, from a volume perspective, at that age between 9 and 12, what do you think is the most appropriate?
Well, here's the thing, and I speak to this a lot, and it's, people think I'm in the dark ages. My thing is, as you alluded to, when children are playing for championships and World Series and all these things every weekend, they don't really, I don't believe they really understand what it's like to compete for a city championship, a league championship, where you're practicing and then you're playing, say, 20 games, which leads into a playoff, which leads to a championship. Now, suddenly everything's a championship. Everybody's getting a 3rd place trophy, a 2nd place trophy, or a medal. And so it's not what the high school varsity or the college or even beyond, hopefully, with regard to pro ball looks like. What it looks like is an extended season leading to a playoff, leading to a championship. So as far as the proper number of practices to game, I'm a big proponent of 2 practices for every game. I don't believe in the 4 to 6 games a weekend. I just don't think any roster at 9 to 12 can compete with the number of arms that it would be required to meet all of those innings. You're talking about players that are playing multiple positions. Some cases you're talking about catchers pitching, shortstops pitching. My whole premise between 9 and 12, if there was a perfect world, is I would let those 9s, 10s, 11s, and 12s all compete together. Because what is missing in baseball, if I look at a Latin player, that player from a young age is used to competing against older athletes. There's no such thing as he's too big, he's too strong. Now, I'm talking within these age groups. I'm certainly not talking about a 10-year-old competing against a 16-year-old. I'm talking about 9 through 12, because that mirrors the model that is going to be in front of them as high school players, as potential college players. When we do these programs, so even if we did 9 and 10s and 11s and 12s, and we commingled those teams, 2 things occur. One, the younger students see how the older athletes move. They see their confidence. They see their speed. But most importantly, they see their strength and explosiveness. When we look around and we say, this isn't competitive, that's not competitive, it's because adults have made it not competitive. They have basically stripped the game to make a business model that doesn't meet the developmental model that the sport requires at the older ages. So if I take a Latin American 10-year-old, he's competing against 11, 12, and even 13s. Whereas in our country now with travel baseball, 9s compete with 9s, 10s compete with 10s. We have parents that get upset. That boy can't possibly be 10. He's too big. He's too fast. He throws too hard. That's not what the game is about. The game is not meant to be about, okay, slow it down so I can get a hit. No, it's meant to learn. This is what happens. He has a ball. You have a bat. We're going to teach you how to hit. We're going to teach him how to throw strikes. That's just the way the game works. So in my opinion, if we spent more time developing younger athletes around older peers, older brothers, older teams, things that allowed them to see, listen, hear the game at the more aggressive levels, it would help with their skill set development. And that's what's really missing, is that organic kind of playground mentality where, hey, we're going to ride our bikes and, we're going to play with, the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders are all going to play against each other. That's really where the game is going to ride.
Good feedback there. I've never really thought about that perspective when it comes to the Latin American players versus our system here, playing 9 through 12. I know my father, who's about to turn 70, that's the way they did it. They played 9 through 12, and they may have been better for it. And I'd certainly always, maybe my older parents, I don't know if they like this or not, but I do like it when our younger kids come and play with our older kids, or that they might have a younger brother. I'm always encouraging them to bring their younger brothers just for that, so that they can see how they speak to each other, how they carry themselves, how they move about the field, etc. So I couldn't agree more on that, on getting the younger kids around the older kids.
But I think you'll find, so I have an older son, I have a younger son. My oldest son used training wheels to learn to ride a bike. My youngest son was right there watching, but he watched my oldest son ride the bike. He just picked up the bike and got on and took off, my youngest son. And so when we learn sports, there's too much micromanagement that takes place at the youngest levels of the sport. Now, when we get older and we're in that 14 to say 18 window, I get it. We demand and we should want better coaching, more instruction to prepare us for that high school varsity intensity and level, as well as college. But at the younger games, we've taken that away from the kids, and we've decided we're going to teach them in 30-minute blocks or 45-minute blocks of time, whether it be through a lesson or a structured practice. And what ends up happening is we can't possibly get to all 12 or 15 or in some cases 20 student athletes to give them everything that we want. Whereas if we let those multiple age groups get together and said, okay, one day a week, bring your brothers down. And what we're going to do is we're going to choose up sides. We're just going to be here to supervise, but you guys are going to call the game. You're the umpires, and just go out and play. You're going to find that they all get a lot of at-bats. They go through the lineup a lot. People are going to make errors. But what's beginning to happen is the younger players are watching how the older players communicate. They watch how they move. They watch how they cover bases. They watch how they catch and tag. They watch the intensity of their swings. And then the emulation begins to take place. And that is what's missing, because if I'm 7 years old, let me start with 9. If I'm a 9-year-old and I'm good, it's going to be hard for me to find other caliber 9-year-olds. But if I'm playing against 10 and 11-year-olds, now I'm being challenged. Now I know I'm being challenged. And guess what? Yes, they're going to throw harder. When do we want that to occur? If by the current model, everything goes year, all the way up until 17U. It's really not how the varsity of the college games look. So at some point, parents have to step aside. That boy's going to throw harder than a lot of the other boys. Maybe he went through a growth spurt earlier. That boy can hit a ball really hard. Guess what? If I'm playing third, I'm probably going to back up. And if he bunts, okay, he bunted. That's baseball. That's the sport. But if he hits a hot shot, a hard line drive, and I know nobody wants to get hit or hurt with a baseball, But guess what happens? Those boys learn, I have to use my glove. I have to use my glove or I got to get the heck out of the way. And they're going to see what it looked like. They're going to feel what it looked like. And we have taken that away, and we're trying to predetermine the path for boys every single age. We're trying to script tournaments. We're trying to script outcomes, and it can't be done. Little League, and I'm just giving you that name, Little League, Dixie League, Pony League, anything that used to, Babe Ruth, that used to encompass multiple age groups. It did that for a reason. And if we go back and you look at the learning curve of a lot of the younger players, how many young players in the sport of baseball at the major league level or professional level from the United States come into the big leagues at 20 years old? Conversely, how many 20-year-old Latin players have you heard about? Juan Soto, Acuna. I mean, we could go on, and we could run out of names with U.S. players that start playing at 20 in the big leagues. But there's a multitude of those guys from the Latin countries. They're not afraid. They literally have seen the speed and the strength of the game from very young ages. And I just think travel baseball tries to suck every single dollar out of a parent over a course of 8 years. If we start at, say, 8 years old and we go until, that 16 or 17-year-old age group. The other thing to do is ask your parents to answer this question. How many of those parents know parents that have gone through the travel ball process? They are now on the backside of it, meaning they've gone through it. What did they get for their money? If they got a bunch of great memories and their sons are thrilled with the moments, the memories, and the friendships, fantastic. But if they're left bitter saying, I didn't get to play varsity, I didn't play college. Okay, well, if that was the intention from day one, you didn't go about it the right way.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I really appreciate that feedback. You hear so much from different corners. Hearing that from you is definitely a different perspective than what I'm in the midst of right now. So I really appreciate that feedback today.
The other thing, Matt, that I want you to ask a parent, and really, because you're about to get into it, when you go from 12 to the big diamond, there's a massive, massive change from 13 to 15. And as I allude to in my books, strength is a major foundational piece to that. Those that get ahead of the strength training, they play a lot earlier. But let me ask you a question. When your son is a sophomore in high school, would you think that he would like to be competing for a varsity roster spot?
I would hope so.
Okay, so at what point do you want your son to know internally, I can do this? Meaning, I'm ready to face that 18 or 19-year-old kid that has a big beard and he's 6'3", throwing 90 miles an hour from Brentwood or Franklin. And, I know a bunch of high school coaches at Fairview and Pope John too. So those guys, when they're freshmen and sophomores, they all want to come in and say, hey, I played elite travel baseball, but I want to play varsity. Well, you put them against a kid throwing 90 with a curveball, the knees are starting to shake because they've never seen it. And so that's why I say to parents, 13, training wheels are off, get in play. If at 13 years old, you should be playing 14 or 15-year-old baseball if you aspire to play varsity baseball. Because the sooner you see it, the sooner you learn how to deal with it. The longer you avoid that and try to be that big fish in the very small pond, like 15U baseball, that is nothing more than a massive money grab. I mean, money grab. You should be playing 16U at 14 and 15. Some people just don't want to say that. The higher level travel ball programs like NOB and the Scorpions and all these big boy travel programs, those older boys, they move those guys up. They move the good players up. So if they have a really good 14 or 15-year-old, that young man is playing 17U, I promise you, or at least playing 16U. And that's why the good ones, the good travel coaches, the experienced scouts and former players and those people that have an understanding to do right by the kids and the families instead of trying to get every dollar they can. That's the way it should be done.
Nice. Well, I have no doubt. The weight room is where I separated myself a long, long time ago, and was one of the first ones to be lifting heavy 25 years ago when I was 13 years old. That's the expectation, and that's what I've been telling my parents, that if they don't get in the weight room and start eating, they're going to get left behind. The other thing, I'll get maybe a quick reaction. I made an investment in a Hack Attack Junior, and so one of the things I've been telling my kids is we're going to spend all winter, and they're getting frustrated already because I put them in the cage, and put them up close, and they're seeing 70 miles an hour at 12 years old,
Right.
and I'm right on top of them, and I'm telling them that once you start fouling that baseball off, you're going to start seeing more success. And you've got to train your nervous system to adjust to this velocity. If you can't hit velocity, you're not going to be a good hitter. So when you're talking about being ready to face 90, if you're not seeing that consistently, you're not going to have a chance.
Right. And I will tell you, the best thing I've ever done as a coach, and you're right on top of it, that velocity. So the first thing I would do is I would teach the kids, okay, here's how to properly get out of the way of a baseball. Don't freeze. Tuck your head behind your right thigh if you're a right-hand hitter. And the only thing this is going to hit is your thigh or your butt. Is it going to sting? Maybe. But for the most part, odds are you're not going to get hit. But if you get in there and you understand it's all about timing, and when you say timing, young hitters do not give their hands enough credit. They don't trust their hands. And so they think I have to start swinging really early. But when they allow their eyes to see that ball come out of that slot, and then they just react. And as you alluded to, once they start fouling it off, that means the timing is starting to sync up. And then you can either raise your hands or drop your hands, and you start to figure out, okay, everything here is a little adjustment. It's just a little micro turn or a little micro lift of the hands or a pushback of the hands. But you're right. And that is what we deny younger children. Back in the day, coaches did that with jugs machines when we were 13 or 14. And nobody wanted to get in there against a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. And there's no young boy going to tell us he's not nervous. But that's normal. But again, it's coming. So the sooner you learn, okay, I can do this, everything else is easy. 82 looks like it's on a tee. So the thing is, you're doing it the right way from the perspective of strength is at the forefront, and getting elevated with the practice development model, whether it's training versus velocity or training that using that Hack Attack to do ground balls, or fly balls, or, hitting them higher. Because at that point, there's no more intimidation, because once you say to yourself, I can, you do.
Yeah. I've been using that Hack Attack for every aspect of our practice. We do a drill called Pool Party. One of my outfielders came up with, where they want to do it, where I'm sending balls that they can go dive for, like they're diving in the pool. They're calling it a pool party.
Yeah.
And so I've got it cranked up as high as it'll go. I'm shooting them line drives right at them, shooting them balls that sky high that they're not going to see in a game. I mean, to me, that's the only way they're really going to get prepared.
Well, I'll tell you, a great drill I used to do in college. And everything I used to say is, you're always a step and a dive away from making a play. Even if that ball just skips by you, you will be amazed on how many balls you actually get to with a step and a dive. And I will tell you, I used to take old mattresses, I'd put them in our clubhouse, and I'd stack a couple up, and I would throw balls or I'd hit pop-ups, and those kids had no fear because they knew they were going to land on the mattress. And so once you get them to think, okay, I'm getting to this ball. In times past, I probably would have let it bounce in front of me. But now, all of a sudden, you start seeing kids in the infield step in a dive for a ground ball. Outfielders, I'd have my center fielder go high, my right and left fielder would go low. So every time I would put the mattresses out there, I'd say, okay, center fielder, you're going high up for the ball. Left fielder, you're going low for the ball. So there was no collision. But once they know those mattresses are there, they have fun. But they're learning really advanced skill set. So you're absolutely doing it 1000% correct.
Well, I appreciate that feedback by, from someone that's been around this for a long time and is, I follow you on Twitter and really appreciate everything you're doing.
Well, anything you need from me at all, anytime, just you can direct message me on Twitter. Here's another little tidbit I'll leave you with. Tell parents 1,000 calories before bed. They can get that through an everything protein shake. Put Oreo cookies, ice cream, bananas, whatever they like. And then take the other half of that in the morning. And then within 30 minutes of getting up, another 1,000 to 1,500 calories. Those 2,500 calories with the time-released protein will begin to add weight onto their bodies when they're lifting. They need that caloric intake to be between 5,000 and 10,000 calories a day in order to add size at those ages.
Oh yeah.
But anything. Go ahead, Matt.
Now, I was going to say most parents don't understand. I was on the other end of that spectrum where I needed to cut calories in order to get in some better shape when I was in high school. But most kids, their metabolisms are running so fast and they're long and they're lean, and the parents have zero idea what it takes to get those calories in their bodies. And the kids then have no idea. They say, well, I had 2 sausage biscuits from McDonald's instead of 1. That's not enough, buddy. It takes such discipline, like you just said, to do it every day to get those extra 2,500 calories. Because I put them on the scale, and if the scale's not going up, then you're not getting enough calories. Well, I'm eating like a horse. Well, you're eating what you think a horse eats. It's not happening, brother. Like, I can't go home with you and make your meals for you. I can't get up in the middle of the night and have you eat hard-boiled eggs and chocolate milk. So convincing them what it takes, especially, at an early age, 13, 14 versus when it's 17 and 18. And it's really kind of almost too late at that point.
Absolutely correct. You are so on top of it, Matt. I wish there was 100,000 more coaches like you that kind of got it, because I really believe athletes are shocked when they show up at high school and they look in the locker room and they see a guy 6 foot, 195 or 210, and you're 145, and you're wondering how you're not getting an opportunity to play, short or catch, So I can tell you right now that the general consensus among college coaches that 80 to 90% of all incoming freshmen just are not physically prepared to compete at the college level because the game is older now. It's 22, 23-year-olds versus, what it used to be 18 to 20, 21. Now you're competing against 22 to 23 and sometimes 24. So, but anything that you need, Matt, at any time, just reach out, send me a direct message, give me an email, whatever you like, and I'm happy to help out.
Thanks, man. Send me a recording of this on the email. I'll share this with my parents.
I'll send you a copy of it right in about a half an hour.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you to everybody for joining us today. And if you like what we just talked about today and you want to leave a comment, leave it below. I'll answer the questions. Make sure you like today's video and also subscribe. Give us a big thumbs up. Until next time, best of luck in all baseball. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.